Today's show, the future of the NHL's salary cap and trade activity around the Metro Division heats up.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the big news surrounding the NHL as there is going to be a salary cap increase over the next 3 years. You might think to yourself, Dan, that's not that big of news out there. Who gets excited about the salary cap? It could be huge for a team like the Capitals. As we saw Logan Thompson get into an extension that the question was, how are the Capitals going to be able to come under budget and have a guy like Logan Thompson, Charlie Lindgren, and Jakob Chychrun? Well, the news today is encouraging. I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll talk about movement, some trades surrounding the Philadelphia Flyers and Calgary Flames. The Philadelphia Flyers are in the Metro Division, and the trade I'm going to talk about is not going to benefit the Flyers this season, but I think it could change their fortunes in the long term. I'll talk about that. And then in the final segment, I'll talk about the big movement that took place tonight surrounding the New York Rangers and the Canucks. But just to get it going here, talking about that salary cap news and exciting. And if you are an everydayer of the show, you know, I talk about that. I don't think the Capitals can sign Charlie Lindgren and have Logan Thompson and have Jakob Chychrun all at the same time. Well, things may have changed considering the salary cap and what that is going to mean for the NHL as a whole over the next 3 years. I think it is going to work well for bigger market teams, and I'm going to put the Capitals in that category. That, you know, historically they have spent a lot of money on different players, that kind of thing, but it might have a negative impact on some of the smaller market teams. But let's dive into the news today surrounding the salary cap and what that could mean for the Capitals. And one Capital in particular is Jakob Chychrun, one of the 3 players I listed as the Capitals need to be all in on. The Capitals are clearly showing an interest in extending Jakob Chychrun's contract, especially as we gain better insight into the salary cap landscape. And that was one of the things that was spoke about with all of the NHL insiders, is that the Capitals are, in fact, all in on Jakob Chychrun. They just kind of want to know the landscape and ultimately how much money they will have to spend. Now, recent updates from the NHL and the NHLPA have confirmed that the salary cap is set to rise over the next 3 seasons, which gives the Capitals some flexibility to work with. So you take a look at it, some of the players that they might not have been able to re-sign to an extension, well, it might be within reach now, just due in light to what we learned today about the salary cap increase. This is a positive development for the team management as we strategize for contract extension. So let's break them down. The 25-26 season, upper limit $95.5 million, lower limit $70.6. The 2026-2027 season, upper limit $104 million, lower limit $76.9 million. And in the 2027-2028 season, upper limit $113.5 million, lower limit $83.9 million. So quite a substantial uptick in salary cap, and that could be a game changer for a team like the Capitals. And I guess if there is one downside, is a bigger market team could really turn into a dynasty if they had a really good GM that knew how to spend money and could just really get these upper echelon players. I don't really want to concentrate on the negative impact that could have. As far as the Capitals are concerned, that could be a game changer. As we know, Jakob Chychrun, still a fairly young man at 26 years old, is set to be an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. Given his impressive performance this season, there is belief that the Capitals are, in fact, all in and have said as much, playing 46 games with 13 goals and 20 assists for 33 points. So if there was any question about if Jakob Chychrun was going to be a good fit on this team, I think most of those questions have been answered. His contributions have been invaluable, not only solidifying the Capitals' defense, but also some much needed offensive support. And not every blue liner, not every rear guard has that in their skill set to have an offensive flair. Jakob Chychrun has that. So the news today gives us hope that, in fact, some of the players that we were maybe concerned not getting new deals very well could get those new deals. Chychrun mentioned that his success on the ice stems from increased confidence and movement, underscoring his commitment to enhancing his shot. Jakob Chychrun likes it in Washington. Washington likes Jakob Chychrun. I think it is all just a matter of coming to terms with a dollar amount and term to his contract. And it's kind of a tough position, as there's been a lot of speculation about the future of Charlie Lindgren and a lot of these different players, but also some criticism about the deal that Logan Thompson got. Did the Capitals overspend? Did they give him too much term to his contract, considering that there is usually a depreciation in netminders year over year? You take a look at the Pittsburgh Penguins, for example. Their starting netminder for the season, Tristan Jarry, is now playing in Wilkes-Barre Scranton. So sometimes the best laid plans go to waste. And, you take a look at it, there are a lot of different teams around the NHL that are struggling in net. Was that the right decision? So those are the tough questions, how to allocate and where to put your money. I think the Capitals did the right thing. Despite what the outside chatter is, I think the Capitals did the right thing, spending the amount of money that they needed to do to keep Logan Thompson here in the long term. You could have spent less and had a subpar netminder and lost some games. And then are you really coming out ahead? It's just the nature of the beast, that professional sports, you're going to, spend, in many cases, overspend. And sometimes those deals aren't going to pay off. You take a look at Logan Thompson, for example. Even if we got a good 2 to 3 seasons out of him, I think that would be worth it. If the Capitals found a way to win a Stanley Cup, are we going to really look back on it and say, hey, did we give Logan Thompson too much money? So those are all the things. Same goes for Jakob Chychrun as well, as that he has been one of the missing ingredients for this team that they haven't had in quite some time. A dynamic player, a player that there was a lot of question about what kind of Jakob Chychrun are we going to see. Wasn't necessarily a good fit with the Ottawa Senators, so excitement abounds. And also the flexibility. Ted Leonsis has deep pockets, so it gives me reason to believe that he will, in fact, go out and sign and re-sign, or the Capitals organization, Chris Patrick, will go out and sign and re-sign big players and really make this team one to be reckoned with. So the news today, Capitals fans, to put a bow on this segment, you should feel encouraged that some of your favorite Capitals ostensibly will be back due to an increased salary cap. Good news, a win-win as a Caps fan. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about trade activity around the Metro. Listen, it wasn't too long ago that the Carolina Hurricanes traded for Got Ratman and Taylor Hall. Definitely a shot across the bow of the Capitals, saying, we're coming for you. We're coming for you. What are you going to do about it? Chris Patrick dispelled that. But movement, the Flyers, the Rangers, the Metro division is heating up. I'll break it all down straight ahead. Looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game? Finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache, but with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. And that is the frustrating part, isn't it? Your favorite band is coming to town, your favorite sports team is playing, but what is the view of the playing surface going to be like? What is the view of the stage? Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day you can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this next segment here, we're going to talk about some trade activity surrounding a Metro Division team, the Philadelphia Flyers, a team that ultimately, unless they went on a tremendous heater, I don't think have a real hope, I guess anything is possible, of making it to the playoffs. I'm talking about the Flyers, and let's take a look, see a peek, if you will, at the standings. And the Flyers, well, it's one of the teams that is under the tutelage of John Tortorella, or is under the direction of John Tortorella. And ultimately, I think they're in a better position than a lot of people had thought. But if you take a look at them right now, in seventh place in the Metro with 52 points. The Capitals, 74 points. That is the best in the Metro Division. The Carolina Hurricanes are nipping at their heels with 68 points. In the final segment, I'll talk about the movement that took place around the Rangers. But as you take a look at it, things are tightening up a bit. The New York Islanders are playing better. We've seen some improvement in the Columbus Blue Jackets as well. Things could be interesting. And like I talked about in previous episodes, injuries could always derail the hopes of a team that's in a push for the playoffs. But let's talk about the big movement surrounding the Calgary Flames and the Philadelphia Flyers. The Calgary Flames made a bold move, bringing in forwards Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee from the Philadelphia Flyers. What was ultimately in that for the Flyers is to free up some money, right? To get that Joel Farabee contract off the books. And what's in it for the Flyers is not a real big return. I guess I'm going to say this season, and I guess it depends on how that plays out, but they have increased money to spend, more cap space, and ultimately some draft picks that the Philadelphia Flyers have quite a few promising draft pick options, upper end draft picks, and also some increased spending that on paper, the Philadelphia Flyers could be loaded for bear in seasons to come. But the return, the deal announced was the Flames sending a package that includes Andrei, Kuzmenko, and Jakob Pelletier, a second-round pick in 2025 and a seventh-round pick in 2028 to the Flyers. And Andrei Kuzmenko, of course, his best years were playing with the Canucks and is a very streaky player, very hot and cold. Last season, we remember he got sent from the Canucks to the Flames and was on fire. This season, not so much. What's interesting is that neither team retained any salary in this trade, which is a key detail to keep in mind. Now, the Flames GM Craig Conroy shared that the negotiation started off as a potential one-for-one player swap, but quickly evolved into a bigger deal. And it came down to the final moments as the Calgary Flames were preparing for action, and those players were listed to be in the game. And they're like, nope, come out of the game. So there was some questions amongst the players about what's going on. Why are these guys getting pulled off the ice? He mentioned this came together pretty quick, highlighting that they had been talking about these players for quite some time, but the timing just wasn't right. until now. So who is going to benefit the most between the Flyers and the Flames? Well, the Flames are in it. They are in a push for the playoffs. I think they could definitely be contenders for a playoff push. And the players that they got, I think, will benefit them more immediately than what the Flyers got. I would not expect a whole lot from Kuzmenko or Jakob Pelletier this season. As far as Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost, I think that those could be decent upgrades for that Flames team. So what do the Flames gain? Frost at just 25 has put up 25 points this season in 49 games, despite some ups and downs in his playing time, especially under John Tortorella. With a cap hit of $2.1 million, he's also set to become a free agent after this season. So there is some potential. So the other player listed in this is Joel Farabee, who's 24 and has 19 points in 50 games this year. He's had a breakout season last season with career highs, but his production has dipped a bit this year. Farabee is locked in with a $5 million cap hit through 2028, after which he'll hit unrestricted free agency. So you take a look at it. Again, my knee-jerk reaction is that the Flames this season came out ahead. I also think that in the bigger picture that the Flyers could come out ahead. That, you take a look at it. I just told you where they are in the standings. Not going to be a big game changer this season, but I think based on the draft capital that they have and the cap space, that the Flyers could be a team to be reckoned with in years. So let's do that. Let's take a look at the Flyers' perspective. The Flyers side of the trade, Kuzmenko, a player who had a stellar rookie season, is struggling a bit this year with just 15 points in 37 games. Another player, he's going to be a UFA soon, and we'll see if the change of scenery helps him in his game plan. So you take a look at it. What is also in it for the Flyers is that Matvei Michkov has been in John Tortorella's doghouse as of late. And that Kuzmenko actually played with Matvei Michkov. They were teammates. So in that regard, maybe there will be a camaraderie. Maybe they can get some juice out of it in that regard. Sometimes when you have two fellow countrymen together, that can help facilitate some progress. I don't ultimately know if that's what they were thinking, but what I know for sure is that it does appear that John Tortorella is frustrated with his team, and more specifically with Matvei Michkov. So currently the Flames sit in the second wild card spot in the Western Conference, and these additions, like I said, could really give them a boost they need to solidify their playoff chances. Now, you take a look at the Flyers, the flip side of the coin are 4 points out of a playoff spot in the East, struggling with form, having lost 4 of their last 5, including a couple of back-to-back shutouts. So you take a look at it. I think, just my initial knee-jerk reaction is the Flames got much better. I don't think that the deal will be fully realized for the Flyers, except for years to come. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about the most recent trade that took place this evening. Friday evening, it was between the New York Rangers and the Canucks. I think the Rangers are going to be a team to be reckoned with here coming up. I'll discuss straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. So the big news tonight on Friday evening was a big trade between the New York Rangers and the Canucks. Vancouver, New York, a big trade. And ultimately, the Rangers, who they were a team that was listed as DOA, could definitely have found a spark to their lineup. I guess it remains to be seen how this will all pan out. But you take a look at the Rangers, again, a team that had struggled 3 weeks to a month ago. They were seen as one of the worst. I think they were in last place in the Metro at that time. Well, they are now in 6th place. Now, To be clear here, they still have their work cut out for them with 52 points. The New York Islanders on a bit of a heater with 53 points. But could the addition that I'm going to talk about here next be the missing ingredient? Again, it's a bit of a Hail Mary pass. This is a team that is still kind of floundering. They traded their captain. Still have a big mess here, but let's dive into the deal that took place tonight. The Vancouver Canucks officially sent JT Miller along with Erik Brannstrom and Jackson Dorrington over to the Rangers. In return, the Canucks are getting Filip Chytil, Victori Mancini, and a protected first-round pick. This trade has been the talk of the town for weeks, with insights from Elliotte Friedman and the initial reports from New York Post Larry Brooks really heating up. And the Vancouver Canucks were trying to move JT Miller in earnest. It was something that has been spoke about by the premier insiders, Elliotte Friedman, Frank Saravalli, for quite some time, that it's going to happen soon. Well, JT Miller is now a New York Ranger. Let's talk about JT Miller here for a moment. I would say that it's the biggest part of the equation. He was drafted by the Rangers back in the first round of the 2011 NHL draft and had quite a stint in New York. After a few seasons with the Lightning, he really found his stride with the Canucks, lighting up the score sheet with a career-high 72 points in his first season with the team. So on paper, it could be huge for the Rangers. Is it going to be enough to be a game changer? Is it going to be enough for them to win the Metro or even be in a playoff picture? And to any extent, I really don't think so, but I definitely think it could see at least some initial increased performance in that team. So, and who can forget last year, talking about JT Miller, he hit the 100-point mark for the first time, racking up 103 points with 37 goals and 66 assists, a real breakout season. He's currently sitting in the fourth year of a hefty 7-year, $56 million deal he signed back in 2022. So, a spendy deal, to be sure. A player of that caliber is not going to come cheap, but ultimately I think it could be what the doctor ordered, at least in part, for the Rangers. Again, as a Capitals fan, I could care less, but as a Rangers fan, you got to be feeling pretty good about it. But here's the kicker. This trade might be more about team dynamics, chemistry. Chemistry is something that we hear quite a bit about nowadays. It's not about, can this guy score goals, or it's about chemistry. We hear a lot about it in the Capitals locker room, but it is a thing. Reports of tension in the Canucks locker room, especially between Miller and fellow superstar Elias Peterson, have been swirling. Canucks president Jim Rutherford shed some light on this, noting they tried several times to smooth things out, but just couldn't find a resolution. Listen, two professional players at the peak of their game, can't we just all get along? I think it's egos and those kind of things that just really blow those things out of proportion. On the Rangers side, we got Filip Chytil, who's been a contributor with 20 points, 11 goals, 9 assists in 41 games this season. He was New York's first-round pick in 2017, and it's clear to see him, his great potential in him. So that's the big thing there. And Victori Mancini, a fifth-round pick from 2022, has seen some icy time too, playing in 15 games. So quite an evening around the NHL. The Canucks sending JT Miller and Erik Brannstrom and Jackson Dorrington to the Rangers. And in return, the Canucks get Filip Chytil, Victori Mancini, and a protected first-round pick. My knee-jerk reaction is on it that, of course, I think the New York Rangers came out ahead in this a whole mix here, but also I think the Canucks got some pretty decent players in return, and ultimately I think it was just trying to correct the craziness in that Vancouver Canucks locker room. So from the defensive perspective, Erik Brannstrom has been seen action with the Canucks this season, but put some limited time in the AHL, while Jackson Dorrington is still flexing his muscles at Northeastern University. And the key part of the deal is the draft pick the Canucks get is a top 13 protected this year, meaning it's a smart safety net for them. Plus, they won't be retaining any salary from Miller in this trade. So a lot of movement around the Metro Division. In the second segment there, I talked about the movement that took place between the Flames and the Flyers. And in this segment, the big movement, the big kind of, I'm going to go ahead and say blockbuster that took place that sent JT Miller to the New York Rangers. Quite an evening. And you got to start thinking to yourself as a Capitals fan, what does Chris Patrick have up his sleeve? You got to think that they're going to go out and make some big additions or at minimum sign Jakob Chychrun to an extension here. You think that's got to get done. And I'm starting to think that it's more and more likely, despite what I've said, that there is a distinct possibility now that Charlie Lindgren does, in fact, get an extension. Interesting times. It's interesting. I went out and I was looking for a car, for example, and I had, $5,000 to spend. But guess what? Someone gave me another $5,000, and all of a sudden I can start getting a nicer car, or I can get the things that I really want. Same things goes for the Capitals here, as it did seem like they were kind of going to be on a limited budget. There was a lot of question about, they put a lot of money into Logan Thompson. Then there's the rumors out there of how much Charlie Lindgren was going to make. That was a lot of money tied up into just netminding. That the news that we heard today could definitely change the outlook for a lot of players and a lot of teams. But taking a look around the Metro, some moves out there. The Rantanen deal, that is still the biggest move by the Carolina Hurricanes in my assessment. But the crazy thing at the end of the day is on July 1st, Rantanen could go somewhere else. Talk about pushing all of your chips in on this season. That's what I'm talking about. The Hurricanes are very, very serious about being contenders. You take a look at the movements that the Rangers made, a sign that they're very, invested in being a better team. Flyers, I guess what I saw today wasn't so much like, hey, take that Metro Division, but definitely going to be interesting. And I think that despite what Chris Patrick said, that the movement that took place for the Hurricanes isn't affecting his judgment, I really don't believe that. But I think that if Chris Patrick was wise, he would go out and try to acquire some depth pieces or maybe an upgrade, as we know that third line has been floundering a little bit. So some big news on this Friday evening around the Metro Division as some teams are arming up for a playoff push, and some exciting news as some teams will have some extra money to spend for the next 3 seasons. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.